So here's 5 wide receivers I'm looking to start heading into week 11. The first guy's Terry McLaurin of the Washington football team. And Terry McLaurin, he's been solid this year. I thought he wouldn't be that good with Alex Smith, but the targets were there in Detroit. He did his thing with McLaurin. And this guy, he's a top 10, 15 receiver rest of the way. He had a rush for 27 yards, 9 targets, 7 catches, 95 yards, and a fumble loss. But McLaurin now, 2 good games coming up versus Cincinnati and Dallas, where he's going to get his fantasy points. This year, he's been pretty solid. He's had 7 games of double-digit fantasy games. So Terry McLaurin, he's a guy that's perfect in PPR leagues. Washington, they're going to be trailing in most games, I would see. We saw Smith throw the ball 55 times last week. So again, I think McLaurin, he'll have a good game this week, and I like the matchup. So go out there and start him. The second guy I'm going to start at wide receiver is another guy who I've been down on most of the year, but he's proven me wrong now the last few weeks, and that's DeAndre Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. If this guy stays healthy, he's pretty reliable now. In the last few weeks is DeAndre Johnson, coming off another huge game for Cincinnati on 11 targets, 6 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown. And Johnson now in his last 3 weeks, 3 out of the 4 weeks, he's had 14 or more fantasy points. And this week he's got another great matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, let's be honest, they can't cover no one. We just saw Valdez-Scantling go for 149 and a touchdown. So DeAndre Johnson, the targets are going to be there, the matchup's going to be there, and he's a good start this week at receiver. The next guy is Amari Cooper of the Dallas Cowboys. He's back on the radar for me this week. He's a guy I said to go out there and try to trade for, and he's a guy I'm going to tell you to start this week versus Minnesota, who gives up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Cooper, he had a decent game last time in Week 9 when he played with Garrett Gilbert, but now this week things are starting to line up a little for Dallas. It'll be an indoor game once again in Minnesota this time. They give up a lot of passing yards, like I said, the 5th most. He's got Andy Dalton back, the offensive line healthy. I think they're going to adjust a few things, get him the ball more. So Cooper, he's going to be fine in 2 games with Dalton this year. He's had decent fantasy games. In week 6 with Dalton on Monday Night Football, 7 for 79 and a touchdown. And then week 7, 7 for 80. So the receptions are there, the targets are there. Cooper, he's one of the better receivers and route runners in the league, so he'll find a way to get open, and he'll play his game and get things going. So start him. The next guy I'm starting at receiver this week, Christian Kirk versus the Seattle Seahawks. I know it was a bad game for Kirk last week, but he was due for a dud after having 3 games in a row of 20 or more fantasy points. Versus Buffalo, he only had 6.5 points, 4 catches, 27 yards in PPR. But now we get Seattle once again, a dream matchup that gives up the most points to wide receivers. And in Week 7, we saw Kirk do his thing. 5 catches, 37 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 8 targets. They're going to get him back in the game plan. He's going to get the ball. It's him and Hopkins, the only huge weapons over there for the Arizona Cardinals, and Kyle Murray. So I'm going to go put Kirk in my lineup at the flex or 3rd receiver, whatever positions you play. So he's a guy I'm going to be confident in, and I'm going to start him this week in Week 11 at Seattle on Thursday Night Football. The 5th and final guys, Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. This guy, he finally broke out last night once again with a huge game. And this guy, you got to start him each and every week, I say. He's putting up the points. He leads all rookie receivers in yards this year. And last night, 8 catches for 135 yards. And this guy, he's putting in on his show, not each and every week, but most weeks he's putting up points. That's his 3rd game this season with over 20 fantasy points. So Justin Jefferson, he's been fine. He had 2 down weeks in weeks 8 and 9, but because Dalvin Cook had a lot of volume and workload. But I'm not worried about Justin Jefferson the rest of the way. And this week he's got a plus matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys that give up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. So go out there and start Justin Jefferson with confidence. So that's 5 wide receivers I'm starting heading into Week 11.